to the Whole Topic podcast. This is episode 23. And today I'm going to actually just be on my own. The next couple, or maybe I'm going to actually record a couple that it'll just be me answering a couple questions that I get quite frequently that I always have to write a giant answer up for. And with 2025 upon us, there are goals and things that I know many of us want to set in regards to building stronger relationships with their children, with their families. So this time, this time, we're going to talk about what is tea time. Tea time is something I have done for over 10 years with my kids. I think I started when my oldest was 15. Sorry, not that. I started when my oldest was 3, not 15. He just turned 15. And I just kind of continued that on through all of my children. So I want to talk about a few things. I actually took some notes on this because there's a couple of things I want to cover in this podcast that I've thought through or I've talked to other people about, like getting one-on-one time with your child. And we're all busy. Like some of us are just way too busy. And if you're too busy where you can't spend time or break away and spend time with your kids, you probably are too busy and need to cut some things out, unless it's like you're just in survival mode, which I get that sometimes we are. But what is tea time? Tea time is basically a time where I make an appointment with one of my kids every single day. So like Monday is my oldest, Tuesday is Zoe, and so on and so forth. Each person has a day where in the afternoon we take some time and we either make a cup of coffee, usually it's me drinking coffee, tea or whatever, and we sit down and either play a game. I always have like 5 questions I ask. A couple of the questions, just because I know that I might forget about this in the rest of the podcast, but a couple of the questions that I would ask is like, how was your week? What was the best part of your week? What was the worst part of your week? And then once they hit to be about like 8 years old, one of the questions I like to ask, which sometimes could be hard to ask as a parent because, you try your best and sometimes it's hard to get feedback, but it gives them an opportunity to let you know, like, was there anything that wasn't resolved this week? Was there anything that we didn't talk about, or maybe I overlooked, or maybe I was too busy in the moment to actually address the entire thing, or you thought it was unfair, or just things. Ask that question. You won't always, a lot of times, probably 95% of the time, the answer is, well, we've already resolved stuff. I don't really have anything. But there has been times where they have been like, hey, well, I actually get hurt in the situation, or I felt like it was handled in a way that still kind of bothers me. Can you further explain? And for me, as a parent, I am happy to explain if I need to. And that doesn't mean I always have to change my decision, but I have no issue just, and they know that too. Like, I'm always going to do my best as a parent to be as fair as possible with every decision that I make. So that's one of the questions I also ask. When they're little, it's not so deep. It's like, what's your favorite color? Or I try to always, though, hold to 5 questions. So I don't care what I have to do. I'll research or try to think of things before. They have to ask me 5 questions and I have to ask them 5 questions. So, when they're little, I might get the same question asked to me weeks in a row, like, what's your favorite color? Or what's your favorite tree? Or everybody should know my favorite tree is a weeping willow. So yeah, be prepared for questions like that. But as they get older, they get deeper and more meaningful. Why is it important to spend time alone with your children? And I don't spend unless I'm driving or running an errand, every once in a while I will take them for an errand and that will count as their tea time. We'll talk on the way. But why is it important to do one-on-one time? Your kids are not how do you say that? They're not all one person. And I have found that when spending time alone with them, not only do I get to know them as a unique human, I get to know like what are things they're interested in, what are things that maybe we can invest in as their parents to help them pursue things that are important to them. There's there's something about you taking time as a parent and making it a priority to set a calendar appointment to say this at this time every single week I'm showing up for you and I'm going to discuss anything that's important to you. That being said, I want to talk about, so I have 7 kids, as anybody who knows me knows I have 7 kids. And I have heard people say, like, you cannot give proper attention to families with bigger, with more kids. And you can do better when you have a smaller amount of kids. So I am speaking from experience. I come from a large family of 13 kids. So I want to speak to this because I do think there is some truth to that, only if you're not intentional. I have, let's go back a few weeks ago. I was actually kind of talking to people that are from smaller families that ask me, like, how do you make sure each child gets individual attention? Let's just get this out of the way. One, it's about the quality, not always the quantity. Even for myself, I don't necessarily want someone up in my business like 24/7. I enjoy the quality of the time that's offered, but I don't necessarily need a ton of time. Same thing with my kids. Like between everything we do, the meals around the table, between the chores that we do together, between the school that they have, investing in their own interests throughout the day, and just doing life. Most people, at least in my family, an hour carved out to really invest in one child every single day is very, very appreciated by them. And I love doing it too. One of the things that I try to do, like when we have our kitchen going, and I have done, it's been a little different here living off grid, but that we're going to go back to is each child that has tea time, they are to make the meals with me. They spend their tea time with me that day. They get to do certain things that day that keep them closer. And it doesn't mean I don't hang out with all my kids. We're still doing meals together. We're still doing chores together. It's just that one person gets to do a little bit extra. That covers multiple things. It covers, they get to spend time with me. I still get to know them throughout the day, throughout their span of living with me. They get to learn how to cook. They get to give their ideas more throughout the day. So it's not necessarily about how many children you have, it's about the quality of time that you invest in them. And so I'm just going to share a story on that. I was talking to this elderly woman one time. I was in a nursery with her. And this was just, I don't know, a few weeks back. It was at a co-op I was at. And she was sharing her story as far as like when she was 6 years old, she had 2 brothers and her parents would just leave her home and she would have to cook and clean. And she just did that. She took care of her brothers. From then on, she was the youngest. And I had kind of shared a little bit of my story, how, we had 13 and there wasn't a lot of time allotted to me and my siblings. It was like the typical, what you would be concerned about. It's why I, struggled to even wanting to have kids, before we had kids. But as a parent, as I've had more kids, I've realized it's about intentionality. Whether you have 2 kids, whether you have 7 kids, whether you have 12 kids, are you getting up every morning and realizing that, you're the one that's going to show up for them the way they need it? And I do believe the siblings that they have are incredibly valuable to their growing up years. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. Like, it doesn't matter whether you have 2 kids or 7 kids. Find a way to rotate spending time with your kids and asking questions and getting to know them. And you're going to find that the more you do that, the more you actually really enjoy getting together with your child. Even they do, like, I've always heard people be like, get ready for your teens. They're going to be X, Y, Z. I really enjoy my teens, and my teens really enjoy the tea time we have together. And it's just what we call it. It's called tea time. So that being said, I did want to cover that because I hear that. Well, I haven't heard it a lot geared towards my family specifically, but I have heard it, other people I follow on Instagram or other places really hear it. Um, it's not necessarily about the size of your family. It's because I've seen terrible parents parent one child or two children and have their kids taken away. I've seen big families that have done poorly and end up as a result having some really hurt children. So that being said, quality over quantity. It's not. Oh, it doesn't mean you can't spend quantity with them. I love spending quantity, but if you focus more on the quality of the time rather than trying to be like, oh, I can't do it all, you can. It's just a matter of making it a priority to spend time with your kids. And as we're in 2025, you don't have to do it. Of course, I'm only sharing from experience, but I promise you it's worth it. Um, the relationship that you get out of it with your kids is invaluable. They they know you care. They know you respect their thoughts on things. It gives you time to check in so that if something is wrong, it's not just festering forever. Um, because you're always being an open book. And I think it was a few weeks ago, I actually asked one of my kids that. I was like, is there anything, it's one of my older kids, I can't remember which one, but I was like, is there anything that you wish was resolved or that we haven't like done well on? Because we've been living a very, little bit of a rougher life, trying to live halfway off grid while we're waiting for our well to get in. Um, and they were like, no, mom, like every time we've had a disagreement, you've done your best to make sure it gets resolved and resolved well. And resolving well, I want to reiterate this, resolving issues well doesn't necessarily mean you change your position on how you think something to go, like should go. Like if you have to give an answer for a situation just because they're upset or many times they walk away and they might not like the answer, but at the end of the day, they're not upset with me for giving the answer I gave them just because they know that I'm doing my best to give the answer that I think is the best for that situation. And I always leave the option of like, if this doesn't work, like we try it for 2 weeks and it doesn't work, well, then we'll move to something else. We'll come back to um, the drawing board and we'll figure it out. I also find that helps, especially as the kids get older, to just be willing to say, hey, like if this doesn't work for us, we'll come back to it and we'll figure it out. So tea time is literally a calendar appointment with your children, one at a time. I do believe one at a time is the best. That being said, I will take a couple kids out, every once in a while. If I have to go to town, I'll take a couple of them and we'll double it up as a tea time. It just depends on the season of life. Right now, I am in a season of life where I have to go run a few more errands just to survive. So we'll do tea times like that. We're all ask the same questions and we'll drink something special and we'll talk. But just being intentional, being very intentional and not looking at it as, oh my gosh, I have too much on my schedule. I can't be there for them in this way. Your kids will thank you and you will start seeing a side of your kids that you won't see in a group setting. Just because they're individually with you and you are available in a way that you're not when you're trying to make dinner or trying to cook. What do I do with the other kids? Well, the little kids, usually Chloe will be sleeping, hopefully. But the other kids, they just protect each other's tea time. Once they reach a certain age, they have enough siblings to go play with, or they do their own quiet time. They can read. I just haven't really struggled with that. Now, if a baby's awake, then I'll let one of the other siblings watch them for a little while, or she'll just go play with them while the other person does their tea time. I'm kind of in that phase of life now, but if you have littles, it just takes, strategic planning. Like if I felt like my littles were going to be a little cray-cray, I might would put on a VeggieTales or a short movie for them to watch while I met or did tea time with the other child. But there's ways to do it. It's just a matter of strategically working it out the way that best suits your family's needs. I couldn't just go in and tell you how to make sure it happens because I don't know the dynamics of your home. So something you just got to think about and figure out, maybe it's better if you do it at nighttime when the baby's asleep. Or for me, nighttime really isn't an option only because I go to bed early. I like bedtime. But the afternoon after lunch is a really good time for me. But if you have older kids and you haven't started tea time, oof, I don't know, just making an intentional date to take them out or just doing your best to get to know them outside of, it's really just getting to know them. That's honestly how I look at it. So let me see if I had anything else. I had a little small list of things to just discuss on this topic. I think that's actually it. So if there's more questions on what tea time is, please put it in the comments. I'm happy to answer. And that's all I have for this week.